Alrighty, y'all. So I've got this banner up to let you know exactly where we're at right now. So it is Global Hack Week September, and my name is Rosendo from MLH. I am really excited to see some familiar faces in the chat today. I've got Ritesh. Hey, thank you. We do need a Rosendo workshop. You're going to see me today during the daily update, so definitely stay and stick around for that. But outside of that, today we've got a great workshop brought to you by DigitalOcean. We've got Chris from DigitalOcean. He's going to be walking us through how to set up an application on app platform through DigitalOcean. It's going to be awesome. If you haven't already, make sure that you head over to the link that I'm providing right now to get registered for this workshop itself. Make sure you check in. Definitely something that you're going to want to do. Outside of that, like I said before, super excited. Glad that y'all are telling me how you're feeling today. And I'm glad to hear that everyone is doing super well. So without any further ado, this is not about me. This is about you and learning new cool things from DigitalOcean. So without any further ado, as I mentioned, I'll go ahead and add Chris to the stream and let y'all go ahead and take it from there. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, Rosendo. What's up? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to go ahead and let you have at it from here, okay?
All right. Cool. What's up, everybody? Hello there in chat. Tanaya, I always try to say names and then I always mess it up, but I'm 45145. That one's easy. Thank you. How's it going, CJ? Welcome. Tanai Das 123. Welcome. Cool. I'm a little jittery today because recently I had my first kid, and to be honest, this is my first live talk in months, maybe like 6 months or so. So if I am a little bit off, I'm still getting my I guess DigitalOcean sea legs back. So I am Ritesh. Thank you. Welcome. Ashish. All right. Welcome. Arsalan on YouTube. Otto on YouTube. What's up? Welcome, everybody. I always like to start this off by asking, like, where is everybody coming in from? I love how we can do global audience things now. I'm hailing from Las Vegas, Nevada. Born and raised. No, I don't live in a casino. Susmit Ade, welcome. So today, what's up? Sheikh from Bangladesh, Sujay from India. today, I know today is going to be talking about how to build an app on app platform on DigitalOcean. Um, but I thought, you know what, let's kind of take this a step further, maybe a step backwards, and talk about what we want to build in addition to actually building it. I know a lot of us may be in our part of the journey where we're like, well, what do I build? What is the thing that I can build that'll, I don't know, get me notoriety, get me popular, get me users, provide value, all that good stuff. So I'm kind of splitting today's talk into two parts: how to code a SaaS, and then deploying that SaaS to DigitalOcean. And SaaS is software as a service, any kind of website that provides a service that you can charge for. Susmita Day doesn't have a DigitalOcean account due to the credit card thing. We are aware of that stuff, and we are trying to provide different ways to verify accounts that aren't just credit cards, because we can do better. Cool. So let's get it started. This is DigitalOcean. I'm going to pop over to some slides real quick. How to code a SaaS. And let me go grab this thing over here. So this is how to code a SaaS. And I've gone through the gamut of trying to figure out the best, most efficient way to do this. In this day and age, the cool thing about web dev is there's like all these great tools, all these great platforms that you can use. But the problem now is we get a little analysis paralysis. There's like 1,000 different ways to host a website now. So let's talk about what's a good looking SaaS stack looks like. And really, I am always trying to find the most efficient way to do these things. So this is kind of like a how to not code a SaaS. And I'll explain what that means in a second. So, hey, I'm Chris Sev, staff developer advocate at DigitalOcean. I'm a GDE, which is a Google developer expert in web technologies. And you can find me on Twitter at Chris__Sev. Chris Sev and Chris_Sev were taken. So, one of the things I like to talk about is what's the fastest way to get paying customers? If you're building an app, if you want to build a SaaS, this is kind of like the question that you start with after you provide value, after you have a good idea of what to build, right? So our agenda today is I want to talk a little bit about my story, show you my journey into the tech world. And I did that with building a website called Scotch.io. Scotch was a website that I built when I started it when I was 23, and I built it for about five and a half years, and we grew it to about 4 million users per month, and eventually got acquired by DigitalOcean. So that's why I'm here at DigitalOcean. Right on. Thanks, Ritesh. We'll talk about the anatomy of a SaaS. If any of you want to build anything that is going to go on the web, this is pretty much what it's going to look like. So we'll talk about that and what's ideal for a JavaScript SaaS. I lean JavaScript lately, but I have been moving back to like a little bit of PHP, Laravel. So that's the problem with being a web dev nowadays, is there's like 1,000 things you can do. So definitely trying to pick what you find is your favorite stack. We'll talk about that today. So let's talk about the project that I started and built up. So Scotch.io was a website. If you go to it now, it'll redirect to DigitalOcean. It was a side project. And for any of you that have any side projects that you want to build out, priority number one is provide value. And you just serve your customers and you give them what they want. And hopefully money follows and traffic follows, all that good stuff. Success follows. But priority one is always saying, hey, what do my people need? And for Scotch, it was content. What we did was we wrote technical tutorials. We taught people how to code. What's up, Zell Froster? Then you get users. So you build up the traffic, you monetize. In our case, we were a technical tutorial website. We were a blog. So monetize meant ads, and a lot of the websites lean that way these days. Let's see, analyze and grow, and you just keep reiterating that until you get a little bit larger and larger, and then you sell or you continue, and that's kind of a side project life cycle. What's up, Manas? Vipriya. Cool. So let's see. Biggest Scotch.io mistake. So over 5.5 years, the things that I learned were I focused too much on like the coding stack. I rewrote the blog like 6 or 7 times and nobody cared. Like our users don't care if we started on WordPress, I switched it to Laravel, and then it ended up turning into like this giant React single page app. And through it all, nobody cared. They just cared about the content. So my, I guess not warning, but warning to you is don't over-engineer things. Always focus on what value you provide. I definitely probably could have done a lot more in 5 years if I didn't over-engineer so much. So we built our own CMS. I don't recommend it. And we focused on performance, which was good. But I want to talk about starting out building a SaaS. And so some of you may be building out your own things, and the way that Twitter works now, the way that Instagram, TikTok, everything's like fast dopamine, right? We want all our traffic to come immediately. We want all these things to happen as quick as possible. You see all the threads get 1,000 users in 2 hours kind of threads. But when we started out, it took us about 8 months until we got any kind of traffic. So, and this doesn't even show the beginning of the graph where I was working for like 8 months writing stuff and there was zero traffic, absolutely zero traffic. So, right around here, we just kept going, rewrote some stuff. Right around here, we added some new features, but like none of it really mattered. It all was about content. So ideally focus on your value, what you provide to your users. How Scotch fits in with DigitalOcean. We have a lot of our articles on the DigitalOcean community blog, which is a great place to learn about coding. So if you want to go check that out, digitalocean.com/community. Cool. So what is the problem that you're trying to solve? For us at Scotch, it was writing content and providing good design. So let's talk about building a SaaS out now. If you want to build anything, this is what we started out looking like. And what you end up with your architecture, your servers, your where you host your code, where you display your code, all of it's going to be different, right? And there's no one right answer. But what we ended up doing to start was all our code was on GitHub, as you'll probably do nowadays. Our app server was a DigitalOcean droplet. Our database server was a DigitalOcean droplet. We had Cloudflare sitting on top of all that. And then we had our users over here. So our app server can be PHP, Ruby, Go, JavaScript, Node, whatever you want. But basically, you're building an app that is any of these, and it kind of sits on its own location. And when you deploy with App Platform, with DigitalOcean's App Platform, you are going to be able to deploy any of these from GitHub, which will show in a little bit. But what's cool about that is there was a lot more to do when you had to deploy app servers before. And then you have a database server. Setting up your database is kind of a pain, but MySQL, Postgres, MongoDB, lots of options these days with all these global databases that you see, things like PlanetScale. But then you had a database wherever you want to build that out, right? All the CI/CD folks in chat are hyped about that GitHub integration. Yes. And then you can do a lot of stuff with GitHub, right? Like you can start doing GitHub Actions and work through that whole workflow. A lot cooler new stuff coming out. So the core decisions you have to make when you're building your SaaS, and a lot of this, each of these decisions can take like weeks on its own. So you're talking about what language do you want to build in? Framework, language, library, whatever, database, where are you going to store your code? MySQL, Postgres, MongoDB. Where you store your code, GitHub, Bitbucket. What's the one with the Fox? GitLab. Where to host your app. Lots of different places. At DigitalOcean, we try to make it as simple as possible, and I think we've done a great job at really actually delivering on that promise. Where we use NoSQL and where we use SQL databases, it really depends on the type of apps you're building. To start out, I would say if you're using like something like Node, where NoSQL kind of leans into being a little bit more compatible, a little bit easier to go between database to code. Node and MongoDB, great stack. If you're building out something else like a Laravel application, maybe you want to use a relational database, but really I would say go with whatever is the recommended database from the tool that you use. Like let's say Laravel, they recommend MySQL, Postgres pretty quickly. I would recommend using whatever is quickest because you can always move your database later. You don't want to over-engineer your database early. Your view layer, that's on its own a giant thing. If you want to do React, if you want to do Vue, if you want to do something else, if you want to use a CSS library, that can go on for days. And then how you want to build out your API, if you want to, if you need one, external APIs, if you want to use them. So a lot of stuff. So pick what you're comfortable with and pick what gets you to ship fastest. Or pick whatever you, if you're looking for a job in a certain area, pick that and learn that a little bit better. Okay, so if we have the database server and we have the app server and then we have our users, that's kind of like the core two that we're going to talk about. And really, that's kind of just this little black box. And the things that you have to decide on are things like all the things we talked about, right? But then there's other things like networking, CDN, CMS, forms, extra functionality like authentication, payments, e-commerce, search, emails. And I know I'm speeding through this, but each of these as a decision on its own, each one has like 10 options in the market. And then you're going to have to look through all 10 and decide on what's best for your SaaS. Building an app these days is a lot of work. So I don't want to be discouraging. I think it's exciting. I think it's so fun. I think it's fantastic that we live in a time where authentication can be done in like 3 lines of code. So growing and maintaining, there's analytics, there's customer feedback, ads, emails, all those things. So really, when you're building out your database and your app server, you have to worry about all of those things, right? But what if we could like move a lot of that stuff out so we don't have to worry about them? We start worrying about what's core to our application. What if we can move out even further and we can focus on the view layer, which is really what our customers care about? We should just rename this talk today to "Don't Over-Engineer Things Yourself." Any questions so far? I'm happy to answer questions as we go along. Let me know how you're feeling about things. If there's anything you want to build on your own, if you're looking to, what's your goal, I guess? Looking to get a job, looking to build something, let me know in the comments. So let's see. What if we could focus on just what's important to our users, which really they care about the front end, right? Like, I don't know if some of you read TheVerge.com, pretty popular website. They got 46 million visitors last month. They just redid their website and they talked about this whole new stack that they did. And legitimately, I'm reading this whole thing and I'm like, I don't care. You just made the website really unreadable because of the font you chose. So all of this stuff that they're talking about, all these little arrows that they're talking about, it's like, cool, fantastic. But I can't read the site anymore because it's not great. So my little rant for the day. So what do my customers really care about? All of these things, they care about the view layer. They care about what they look at. Otto, the new Verge UI is terrible. Yeah, I it'll be interesting to see how they like kind of peel it back from. I mean, kudos to them. They went, they got creative and they deployed it, which big companies don't usually do. So let's talk about authentication. And next up, what I want to talk about is how you can outsource so many of the things that we just talked about. Don't build your own authentication. Don't do it. You have other things to worry about. Your customers care about the things that you want to build. They don't care about how you built authentication. So there's Auth0, there's Netlify's authentication, there's Okta. Auth0 is Okta now. They got bought. So, but with Auth0, you can do login like this. Auth0, login with pop-up. It does a little pop-up. And then you can get user information with auth0.getUser. Susmita Day says users care about the UI UX part. 100%. That is correct. And always remember that this is basically Chris's warning to you. Don't focus on things like authentication. I think I wrote my own auth server in like 2 months one time, and I was so proud, and I'm like so happy about it. But then people are saying like, hey, did you write any blog posts? Like, we care about the blog posts. Sorry. So let's talk about payments. There's Stripe, there's Braintree, there's Paddle. Braintree is owned by PayPal. Paddle lets you do PayPal. Stripe doesn't let you do PayPal. I know some of you are probably looking for PayPal, being how global this audience is. So let's see, paddle.checkout.open, and then you say which product or what price you're trying to charge people for, and then it opens a little pop-up. So don't try to write your own payments thing. There's tools for it. So as far as headless CMS goes, if you wanted to manage your content management system, we started out building the website that I talked about earlier. We built on WordPress, and then I was like, oh, I don't want WordPress. It's not cool. Even though WordPress now powers like, 60% of the websites. So I ended up building my own, and that took like probably a year and a half. And in that time, I could have spent that time doing something important like writing blog posts. Backend part is becoming easier and handy by day. Yes, absolutely it is. I guess we should focus on the front end part. If your users care about the front end part and that's what they see the most, then yes, definitely focus on that. Your users don't care what your login pop-up looks like, right? They just want to get to the content that's behind the login pop-up. So there's WordPress.com, there's Strappy, which is a cool new node thing. Prismic, which is a headless CMS that you can use. Lots of options. This choosing a headless CMS will take you a while. There's a lot of options. You'll probably have to test them all out. But really, it's if you're going to join a team or you want to, you have some developers that are already familiar with one or the other, go with that one. It's easy to switch between any of them, which is the nice part. If we talk about building out emails, there's Mailgun, there's Postmark. The two things you shouldn't build on your own is, if you want to, go for it. But emails is tough. Authentication is tough. So I would recommend going with one of these, especially if you talk about like getting your emails not into a spam inbox. There's customer service with Intercom. There's forms. Who would have thought there'd be a third-party SaaS for forms? But forms are tough. There's Cloudflare that sits as a CDN. There's Snipcart that is shopping cart. There's Fathom for analytics that isn't Google Analytics. I know I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to sound like this is a negative thing. This is fantastic. When I started coding about 15 years ago, we didn't have any of these things, and I had to build all of it on my own. So what a time to be coding. This is fantastic. So really, all of this stuff, you in the stream and me, we haven't even lifted a line of code yet, and we could probably get all of these done with zero code. That's amazing. A little code. So we have, let's go back on this one. We have whole teams of devs waiting to work for us. We have teams that have been funded by millions and millions of dollars. We don't have to hire them. We just have to pay them their little monthly price, whatever they need. But we now have teams of developers working for whatever we want to build. So how do I build a SaaS in 2020, 2022? That's a typo. We can talk about headless CMSs, which is your database, your app, and your API. And now you're just focusing on your front end. That's the Jamstack architecture. A headless CMS option that you could choose is something like Strapi, which I'm a big fan of these days. Strapi is really cool. Zanaib Fahim, very good question. How do we know we are making the right choice in terms of choosing the applications? That's one of those you can't know, but you can go in with a certain level of confidence, right? And I think the right choice means that you can build faster and that you can get to what matters. So if you're building on Strapi, yes, you're going to have to learn a little bit about Strapi, but then you can get as quickly as possible to your front end. Whereas, let's say you built this in React, Vue, whatever. But if you're on this headless CMS side, you're choosing now, you have to choose your database, you have to choose your app, and you have to choose how to build out your API. Then you got to deal with all the things that go with all three. So that gets you to ship your product slower than this would, right? So the right choice, I think, is what gets you out fastest. And the right choice, also, you have to balance out, like, if I outgrow this option, is it easy to bail out and to get my content out of here and go somewhere else? But the cool thing these days is whatever options you choose, there's very good interoperability between migrating to something else. That's what's great about stacks these days, is they all kind of like, the standard here is you're storing your data in like JSON format or relational format. So it's easy to switch out. So the other part to that is don't think too hard on it. Just hit the ground and actually walk or crawl instead of just getting stuck in analyzing. So that's the Jamstack architecture. Strapi is a headless CMS. Language, database, where to host your app, your API, your networking, your CMS, all of that is in Strapi. And I keep calling out Strapi. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I like them. Other options are like Sanity. Other options are on the JavaScript side. There's even more options on the other languages sides. So the view layer is where the fun really happens. In my opinion, I am a full stack developer, but I like focusing on the front end. You may be different. React, Next, Gatsby, not so much Gatsby anymore. But so if my SaaS flops, if you built this whole thing and it flops and nobody comes to buy your stuff, basically, at least you didn't have to write your own CMS. At least you didn't have to spend months and months and months doing something that may have flopped. Yeah, Remix is a great option. What are the new ones? SvelteKit, Astro. There's always a new one. So in summary, focus on things that matter and outsource things that don't matter. And that's kind of my spiel on creating a SaaS creating a SaaS is easier in 2022 if you choose to make it easier. So yes, maybe you do have to pay eventually. There's lots of good free tiers. Maybe you have to pay for outside services here and there, but at least you didn't spend 2 months building it yourself. And then it's brittle. And then the cost to maintain something is probably like 5x what it took to build it. Or 4x, what do they say? Cool, so that's the slides part of it. Let's talk about building an app and deploying it to DigitalOcean app platform now. How are we doing on time? It's like perfect at the halfway point. That never happens. Cool. So here we are at DigitalOcean. I guess we can take a quick break. Anybody have questions, comments? I'd love to hear if any of that was helpful. If you're thinking about building stuff more, cool. I saw before this started, there were some comments in the Twitch chat about public speaking. It definitely takes some time to work up to it. It's taken me years to not even perfect my craft, just do not terrible at this stuff. But just, I think, find the lowest barrier of entry that you're comfortable with. So maybe that's talking to your friend. I always like thinking of it as like talking to a friend across a coffee table, right? And trying to explain to them what I'm thinking. And then maybe jump to a meetup that has like 10 to 20 people. Then maybe jump to a meetup with like 50 people. And then start applying to conferences, do online things. You can start streaming, like just press record, right? But let's see. Thank you. Helpful and insightful. Thanks for that. What do you suggest to do for a new developer on getting themselves to know these new and upcoming stacks? It's getting crowded out there. And for a new developer, it can be very daunting. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. I'm trying to get my cousin into coding right now. And I'm like, oh, go here. And then it's like, okay, but there's like 30 pages on there and each of them is a different option. So it can be very daunting. I think it all starts from your goal. What are you trying to do? If you're trying to build if you're trying to join a team and get a job, I think picking something to focus on, because if you join a team, you're going to apply for a specific position, right? So you want to get your best at that craft. So if you want to be a database engineer, if you want to be a front-end engineer, back-end, APIs, whatever, just, I would say, focus on that and do like mock interviews, go look at job descriptions and see what they're looking for these days, and really focus in on that and then attack that angle. If you're looking at, and I guess that doesn't answer the question of like which to choose. I would say play around with each one of the options that you have, maybe narrow it down to 3. Let's say you want to be a front-end engineer and you want to focus on like JavaScript front ends. Let's say you have React, Vue, and Svelte. I would say build something on your own there in each of those 3, and then just see what you like best. Your opinion matters here. And if you're going to be working in a job in something, you might as well enjoy what you're building, right? Or how you're building it. And then one of my biggest pieces of advice to this whole process is document your journey. Write about what you're doing. Blog on Dev2, blog on, what are the other, Hashnode. I would say that when I go to hire, I always look to see if somebody has a GitHub account and if they've written code there. And then my second priority is to see if they've ever blogged about it, because I see reading people's articles as like a way into their mindset, a way that I can see how they think. So write about what you're learning about. That's really how Scotch.io got started. It was kind of my personal journey. And then people started reading more. And from there, I've gotten pretty much any job that I've gotten beyond that was because of my writing. The stacks for Scotch.io, it started out as WordPress, and then it went to Laravel, which is a PHP framework, which I absolutely love. Really big fan of Laravel. And then it went to kind of a split between Laravel and a front end that was a single page app, which was React. And then Next.js wasn't out around those times. So it ended at Laravel plus React on top of a MySQL database. And it was all hosted on DigitalOcean, and then it had Cloudflare sitting on top. Cool. So let's talk about deploying an app to DigitalOcean app platform. So we have a couple different products. We have Droplets, which are our servers. We have Kubernetes. We have app platform. We have functions, which if you joined the workshop on Monday, I believe it was on functions. And then we have databases. So what's cool about this is we have a lot of the tools necessary to build out those stacks that we saw in the slides. So let's click on app platform, fully manage infrastructure. You can deploy your app straight from GitHub, which is really fun, really easy compared to what building out your own servers looks like. So if I go to login, here's my dashboard. I have under here on the left, apps. You can zoom in. On the left, apps. And these are app platform apps that I have. And let me show you a quick one. Let's say this is my Hello Laravel app. I can click it. I have a DigitalOcean URL here. And this is my Hello from Laravel deployed to DigitalOcean. Just a Laravel app deployed. So let's go ahead and create an app and see what this looks like. Quick question regarding writing, does non-technical blogs count? Yes, it does. If you can write well, and when I say write well, I mean, can you convey your thoughts on a subject easily so that the reader can understand it? It's kind of like writing code. Can you lay out your code so that it's easy to understand, well written, and not like 1,000 different lines that don't make sense? I like reading people's writing and I like reading people's code. So creating an app, we can deploy from GitHub, GitLab, DigitalOcean Container Registry, Docker Hub, or we can pick a sample app, which are some GitHub repos that we've built out to let you experiment. So let's see, we can have all these different types of apps. I'm going to go ahead and say, let's do a node one. And instead of just deploying straight from the DigitalOcean repo, I'm going to go over here. I am going to fork this. Let's fork this right here. I'm going to deploy it to, I already have a fork on my personal account. Let's go see if we can find that then. So I'll go to GitHub. What was that thing called? Sample Node.js. Okay, let's go find it. Sample Node.js. Did I rename it? Okay. Don't know what's happening, but let's just go ahead and deploy the node one then. So we'll click next. It renames it something, sample Node.js. So we have a web service. And let me show you a quick hint at like a quick tease at like why app platform is cool. We talked about in our slides the different things that we can do to deploy all these things. The cool thing about app platform is you can add a resource. So let's say we have a node app here. I can click add resource. I can deploy a database now. And let's add the database. We'll have a Postgres database. We'll call it DB. Or we could add in one of the databases we have created in the past. But for this, I'll create a dev database and I will create and attach. So now we have a node app. We have a database attached. And just like that, we have the app server and we have the database server that I talked about all being deployed at once. We could even say, oh, you know what? Let's add a little bit more. Let's add a thing from a source code. And let's add a sample function. Let's go ahead and add a hello world function. And I'll click next. So now we're deploying 3 different things, all that can be working in the same application, all to DigitalOcean. And it just took a few clicks. And what's cool is anytime you push to GitHub or wherever for any of these, they'll go ahead and auto deploy themselves, which is really nice. So I'll go ahead and click next. You can add your environment variables, which will definitely be important because let's say your app needs to connect to your database or your database needs to connect to your function. And then you just add the environment variables here. We'll talk about that in a second. So I'll click next. So this is our app. This is the region. We can select what region we want to deploy to. Whatever is closest to your users is always best. So since I'm in Las Vegas on the west coast of the US, I'll click San Fran, click save, and I'll go ahead and click next. So we have our app, 3 different things. How cool is that? We have environment variables and we have our app info, billing. You do get some free static sites with your plan. But what's cool about this is I already have like a ton of apps. That's why it's like saying pro plan. But what's cool about this is if you had done your own server, your own database, and deployed those, you would look at pretty comparable costs. So let's go ahead and create resources. And it'll go ahead and deploy and build those 3 things. And if I go to the settings tab right here, you can see that I have Node app, I have a database, and I have a sample function. And then you can add more from this little create button. But while we're here, let me go back to apps. That'll keep deploying. Let me refresh that page. So that's the new one. That'll keep deploying. What else have I deployed? I built a site for my cousin. He has a movie review website. So I had this built and deployed to DO. So he just like reviews movies. It's kind of fun. But this one is built on Next.js. Let's see. There is a sample Laravel API that we can use. So this is a Laravel app connected to a database, and it is basically an API. So you can build a front end and attach it to this, and now you have a back end, you have a database, and you have the front end. So let me dig into this one and see what that looks like. So we have 2 components here. We have the Laravel API, and we have the Laravel database, and we can see how much usage it has. We can go into settings. We can see the Laravel API is coming from this GitHub repo right here. And if we scroll down, we can see the environment variables it uses. And let me show you what's cool about this, because we have this database up here. And we can look at this database info. Here's all the connection parameters. We have the password here. And what's cool about this is I've had talks where people just take the password and then go ruin the database immediately. But what's happening here is we have trusted sources, so we can edit this. So this database can only be connected to from this application. So you can take this password, but you can't really do anything with it because only this app can use it. Cool. So let's go back here and let me show you what's cool about this is environment variables. We have edit. We have our, where are you? Database connection is a Postgres connection. Our database host, you can enter your environment variable by referencing the other component like this. You can say hostname, password, database, username, password, and you don't have to like type in all that stuff yourself. So we have these 2 components, and then eventually, if I wanted to build on top of this API, I could add a front end, React, Next.js, whatever, and then that can connect to this app, which connects to this database. Any questions on all that? Anything you all want to see? We have runtime logs that can show you what's happening in all of this. You can see the requests happening. You can go into console, and you can actually run commands from the console in here and see your folder structure. You can run commands like some PHP commands here. But all of that from the dashboard, which is really nice. You don't have to like SSH into your server. You can see activity. You can see deployments, when they went live, who triggered them. You can see insights as far as CPU usage. You can see it for the whole app. You can see it for each component. So the database is getting a little bit more usage than the app itself, but you can do all of this stuff right inside of one app platform app, which is really cool. Before you had to deploy to like 5 different places and then link them all together. But yeah, really nice. Let's go see how our new app is doing. It's creating the database. Let's see. Go to build log, see what's happening in here. Cool. So yeah. So if you have any apps that are already on GitHub, you can come here right now, DigitalOcean app platform, click create, and just deploy from your GitHub repo and have a live URL. And then once you're ready to go, you can go into here, you can go to settings, and then down here, you can add a domain. And you can add whatever domain that you've bought. I know some of us probably have like a lot of domains sitting around doing nothing. But you can add a domain, and then you have a production level application ready to go. Elsoft79, what is the purpose of Laravel? Laravel is a full stack PHP framework that lets you build out your backend. It lets you build out your front end, and it lets you build out APIs. It lets you connect to a database. It's a full stack framework. And I'm going to show my bias a little bit. I think Laravel is honestly the fastest way to build out SaaS applications currently. The developer experience is second to none in Laravel, but and I have gone through a lot of time spending time in the JavaScript Jamstack world. I don't think there's an equivalent to what Laravel has in the JavaScript side yet. But people are working on it, so lots of fun stuff. So yeah, I encourage you to go try out App Platform. If you have anything on GitHub, or if you want to try out these sample apps, go ahead and deploy something, see how it works for you, and then let me know how it goes. You can reach me on Twitter. But that's about what I had for you all today. Just let's talk about building a SaaS, and then let's talk about deploying a SaaS. So if anybody has any questions to round out this session, happy to answer anything as far as, I don't know, careers, building SaaS, deploying SaaS, writing, getting jobs. Let's see. All right. Oh, thank you. Zainab Fahim. Appreciate that. Yeah, hopefully this was helpful. I know that getting into all this and like going into careers and figuring out what you want to build is daunting. I will say I'm having trouble myself figuring out what's next. I had a lot of fun building the last project, getting that acquired. What's next? Who knows? Jimmy, how do I gain traction if I were to write a blog? That's a great question. I mean, definitely write about what you're interested in. But what's cool is you can write and build out your own personal blog, and then you can cross-post it to Dev2 and Hashnode, and they already have a really good community there that is really supportive from what I've seen. So build out your audience there, share it to Twitter, share it to your circles on Reddit. But the flip side of that is, how do you gain traction on a blog? It takes a lot of time. Because what's interesting is we were having like 4 million monthly page views, right? And of that, we did a lot of Twitter, Facebook, sharing on social. Social was 2% of that traffic, which is mind-blowing. Everybody spends time on social, but the real powerhouse is Google search still, and Google sent us all of our traffic. But if it's a new website, Google won't really recognize the site or send traffic to it for a little bit. You have to write and update the site a few times, probably like once per week for a while, maybe like 3-4 months, for Google to finally see the site to start sending you traffic. So how do you gain traction on a blog? Consistency and patience. But if you're already writing about stuff that's interesting, write because it's interesting. Don't write because you're looking for traffic. I think that's important when you're starting. Cool. Well, we've got less than 10 here left. If there aren't any more questions, we'll leave it open for maybe another minute or two. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. This was a lot of fun for me. Like I said in the beginning, I haven't done a live talk in a long time, and you forget how parched your mouth gets. But it is a lot of fun when the comments are this lively. Sometimes I've done talks where there's like no comments at all, and you're just like talking to yourself. So thank you all for being so active in the chat. Thank you for just voicing your opinions and saying what, giving out your questions. I really appreciate that. Hope you've had fun this week. And yeah, if there's no more questions, we'll wrap it up. Thanks so much for being here. Have a great rest of your week. I know there's a lot of fun stuff going on. So yeah, have a good time and happy coding. Rosendo, I think you're muted.
Isn't that always the case? Thanks so much, Chris. I really appreciate you spending your time here. Such a great informative session on how to get started with DigitalOcean. Didn't even realize how easy it was to set up an app there. Just, put in your existing GitHub repo and set up all of your services. And there you go. You've got a deployed app. Also great to hear about your developer experiences, especially, selling your first blog, Scotch.io. So really interesting stuff. Congratulations on that. And thanks once again for joining us. Y'all stick around because we've got daily updates coming up after this. But yeah, outside of that, we're going to go ahead and get it wrapped up. Thanks for joining us, folks. And good luck with the rest of Global Hack Week. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody.